Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. The Roval, the ultimate wild card. The race that everybody needs to go in basically on their toes because they don't know the unpredictability of it, with a lot of differing strategies, track position, and a lot of chaos. Yesterday, it was an elimination race in the round of 12, and we know the 8 drivers moving on, but one driver, not in the playoffs, played the spoiler and had the party. Let's get into all that went down at the Roval yesterday. Number 1, Allmendinger, the Dinger, finds victory lane for the first time this season with Colleague Racing as they captured yesterday's Bank of America Roval 400 at Charlotte Motor Speedway, beating William Byron, Kyle Busch, Ty Gibbs, and Joey Logano for the victory. This was a big win for Allmendinger and the Cup team Colleague Racing yesterday because it has been a rough stretch for them this season. They started the year almost winning the Daytona 500, and then they got crashed late in the end of the race. But ultimately, they actually got a top 5 out of it. Then next week, they go and they wreck at Fontana, and from there on, it kind of was, kind of downhill for them. But then they started to have some momentum and started to be in the top 16 in points towards the summer stretch. And then, when we got towards the end of the regular season, they started to fade, and ultimately missed out on the playoffs. Coming into this race, Allmendinger knew he could upset the playoffs and win this race, knowing that his security for next year regarding Cup or Xfinity is to be determined. The more likely rumor is that he's going to be going back to Xfinity. But yesterday, he came in knowing, I have been victorious here in the Xfinity Series. I want to do it on the Cup level. And yesterday, he did just that. Had a really good car at the beginning of the race, ran in the top 5 early on, then faded because he lost track position because some of the drivers took a different strategy. But by the time we started the final stage, Allmendinger found himself in the lead, and despite some restarts late in the final stage where it got a little chaotic with a couple of spins, a big wreck, a car bursting into flames, thankfully the driver, Ricky Sanders Jr., was able to climb out of there with no injury whatsoever. Allmendinger had the race to himself, basically. He was the control guy, despite a couple of challenges from guys like Ty Gibbs, who was looking for his first career Cup win, William Byron, who wanted a few extra bonus points to head into the next round of the playoffs, and of course, Kyle Busch, who came in with a must-win situation. Allmendinger did not hold back whatsoever, leading the most laps and coming across the start-finish line in first place. And he was very emotional over the radio, hooping and hollering after he won the race, and of course was emotional when he climbed out and talked to TV in his post-race interview because he said, you just don't know when you're going to win another Cup race. This is Allmendinger's 3rd career Cup win. His first career Cup win came in that thrilling battle with Marcus Ambrose at Watkins Glen in 2014. And then 2 years ago, in Colleague's second year in the Cup Series, but as a part-time team, 1 year before they went full-time, Allmendinger was able to take into the victory lane at the first ever Indianapolis road course race for the Cup Series. And it was a big win, and he was such an emotional hoop and hollering winner that day. He was so excited to get Matt Colleague and Chris Rice their first win as a Cup team. And now he gave them their second Cup win as a Cup team. It was a very impressive job by Allmendinger, who, again, his status regarding the Cup Series next year is up in the air. More likely, again, as I mentioned, the rumor is that he will be more likely going back to Xfinity Series, which I think is possibly a good idea for him because he's been more competitive in the Xfinity Series with the Colleague Racing team and been able to run for wins and championships more so than he has in the Cup Series. But he couldn't pass up the opportunity to come back to Cup this year and give it a shot. And even though they didn't make the playoffs, and it might not be the season they were hoping for, this win gives them a little bit of confidence heading into the last few races of the season and gives them some momentum to look ahead to 2024 next year, no matter what series he'll be driving. But a big win for Allmendinger and the team. Congratulations to him and Colleague Racing on their first win of the season yesterday. Number 2, Larson advances. Holy moly, what a roller coaster weekend for Kyle Larson. Came in 15 points above the cutoff line, needing to have a good day on the track in order to advance the next round because remember a year ago he failed to advance the next round because he made contact with the wall late in the race and the car wasn't the same and ultimately got eliminated from the last spot because Charlotte Roval was able to win the race in what was a walk-off victory for the 20 team. Well, things didn't get off to a good start for Kyle Larson on Saturday in practice. The car hit the wall coming into the intersection in turn 1, and ultimately they had to go to a backup car. They weren't allowed to qualify. They weren't able to run the rest of practice. He had to start in 37th spot. But Kyle Larson came through the field and was able to negotiate the couple cars that he was racing against towards the back at the start of the race and had good speed, and it looked like he was putting himself in position to get those points that he needed. He got some stage points in stage 2, and it really helped him buffer his cushion above the cutoff line versus who was behind him and below the cutoff line and possibly could need to win the race in order to knock out the 5 team. Well, they got their points and they remained in the top 10 for a majority of the final stage. They did fall back to finish 13th, but at the end of the day, Kyle Larson makes up for the one that got away a year ago and is able to advance into the round of the 8. And with Homestead in this round and Las Vegas, there's no doubt in my mind that Larson can win one of those 2 races or possibly both and make it to the championship 4. He's got a really good shot, and despite the rough start they had of the weekend with the wreck in practice, they take that backup car and they got their way into the round of 8. So nice job by Kyle Larson and the 5 team. Number 3, Reddick points his way in. Tyler Reddick came into this race below the cutoff line, but by only 2 points. Well, he helped his chances by winning the pole Saturday for the cup race that happened for the cup race. He was able to get the pole and run up front and led a good amount of laps yesterday before he had to come in, and everybody was basically on different strategies versus do you want stage points or do you want to go for the win? Well, for someone like him, I'm sure he would have loved to win, but you need those stage points versus the competition that you're racing against. You got to try to outpoint those guys. And he did just that by getting some stage points despite pitting the gap that he had back to a couple of those guys. He was able to rebound inside the top 10 at the end of stage 1 and get those stage points, and got a few more in stage 2, and pretty much hovered around the top 15 for a lot of the race, but rebounded and got himself in the top 10 at the end of the day, finishing in the 6th spot. He is only one of the 2 2311 cars that was able to make it into the round of 8. We'll talk about his teammate in a moment, but a nice job by Tyler Reddick to go from winning the pole to pointing your way into the round of 8. I had a feeling Reddick was the one guy below the cutoff line that I had the most confidence in that could make it into the next round by outpointing his opponents out there. And he did just that, and he's now locked himself into the round of 8 with a chance to make it to the championship 4. Can he get the job done? We shall see. But the 45 team was able to make it in yesterday. Number 4, the 4 men that have been eliminated from the playoffs now after yesterday's cutoff race include Kyle Busch, Ross Chastain, Brad Keselowski, and Bubba Wallace. Starting first with Kyle Busch, he qualified in the top 5 on Saturday's qualifying session, doing what he needed to do to put himself in position with a chance with some track position to have a shot to win yesterday. And they gave it their best, and they had a shot, and that's honestly all you can say. They ran up front all day long. They had a couple chances on those restarts racing Allmendinger to try to take the lead from him and get the victory that he needed to advance himself in, and it would have knocked out Martin Truex Jr. However, Allmendinger was again just too strong on those restarts, and when Kyle Busch faded back to 3rd after getting passed by Byron, I knew right then and there it was over unless if the front 2 were to somehow recreate that 2018 finish between Johnson and Truex, tangling in the final corners and allowing 3rd place Ryan Blaney to steal the victory. Unfortunately, it didn't happen despite a couple of close moments where it looked like it could happen. It ultimately will lead to Kyle Busch's elimination from the playoffs. But for his first year with RCR to get them into the round of 12 and at least able to get them back to victory lane this year, this was still a good season, and I think Kyle Busch will be even better next year, learning from the first year with a new team in RCR. Then we go to Ross Chastain, who came in 10 points below the cutoff line. He needed to have himself a good day yesterday. Well, he had a good finish, but unfortunately the points and the gap that he had versus the competition to try to point in was not in his favor whatsoever. There were times where he faded late in the race and had to come in under, I think, a green flag pit stop, and he fell back a little too far in the field. He was able to rebound with a late pit stop and able to get back up inside the top 10 and finish 10th. But once again, the points, not enough. Kind of a little bit of a down year for Chastain and the Trackhouse team after a spectacular year they had a year ago, winning 2 races and advancing to the championship 4 thanks to the Hail Melon move at Martinsville. Unfortunately, Chastain will not be able to get back to the championship 4 this year, but hopefully they learn some things and they'll learn from their mistakes from earlier in the year and come back stronger in 2024. Then we go to Brad Keselowski, a guy who has really elevated RFK to the next level after a rough first year with the team. Brad Keselowski and Chris Buescher together were able to put together one of the best seasons for RFK we've seen from the team in quite some time. Both cars were able to make it to the playoffs, and Chris Buescher's been to victory lane 3 times this season. An unbelievable job by him and the RFK team. Keselowski hasn't been to victory lane this year, but he sure as hell has been consistent this year. And at times, it seemed like he could have a chance to win some races like the super speedways. But the odds didn't play in his favor, or some of the moves that he made were not the right ones. But regardless, he had himself a really good year and advanced to the round of 12. I think was an accomplishment for him and this team. Ultimately, yesterday, it's a road course, and it's not really been Keselowski's bread and butter the last couple of years, especially with road course racing. Even with the move to RFK, he's kind of struggled. You can't say he didn't try. At times, he was in the top 10 and looked like if things had gone his way, maybe he could have pointed his way in, but not a lot of stage points. I don't think any at all. Ultimately is what led to him being eliminated. Plus, he spun late in the race, and it kind of really put the nail in the coffin for them. But still a good year for Brad Keselowski and the 6 team, and they're going to look to finish the year strong. And finally, Bubba Wallace also eliminated from the playoffs yesterday. They came in pretty much, all odds against them because, again, it's not really been his type of forte, road course racing. He qualified in the top 5 with his teammate, but he didn't really have the all-out speed that Tyler Reddick or some of the other competitors had. So Bubba kind of faded into the end of the final stage, got involved in a few incidents, was able to get back up to 16th, but ultimately eliminated. I mean, the odds were against him to make it to the round of 12 anyways. After entering Bristol, it looked like he was going to be one of the 4 drivers eliminated in the round of 16, but he proved a lot of us wrong by advancing. And he, in his interview, said post-race, looking back, what could have been for you guys if you could have, what was the difference for you guys to get to the round of 8? He said, winning at Texas, and looking back on it, he's right. I mean, if they had a good restart and they didn't choose the outside lane and taken the bottom, they would have been in the round of 8, and we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. It would have been him winning and not William Byron, but he made the wrong move, and unfortunately, that's what made him pay the price and now suffer elimination in these playoffs. But for Bubba Wallace to make the playoffs this year, after the first couple years of 23-11 have been decent years, but still, trying to develop as a driver and be more consistent, they've done a lot of good things this year. They've been a little more consistent. They've had a chance at a couple of wins. It doesn't mean they still can't win any of these last 4 races. They can. They've certainly showed the speed this year. So it's a good momentum builder for Bubba Wallace and the team going forward into next year. So despite being eliminated, Bubba should still hold his head high. I mean, his team owner, Michael Jordan, at the end of the day yesterday, gave him a little pat on the back and said, "You did a good job, my friend," and that's all you could ask for from the boss man. So those 4 drivers ultimately see their championship chances gone, but that doesn't mean they can't finish the year strong. And number 5, the road course action yesterday. Yesterday was a little bit of a difference for the road course racing this year. All the other road courses that we've had in 2023 have eliminated stage breaks. Well, for this race in particular, we brought back stage breaks, and it led to some race fans and some drivers, I think, a little polarized about the decision because they felt like that, eliminating stage breaks was good to just see what the strategy could play out for some of the race teams. Well, I gotta say, the stage breaks honestly made it very interesting yesterday. We had a couple of different leaders at certain points of the race. At the beginning, it was Tyler Reddick. Then we started stage 2, and it was Christopher Bell. And then Chase Elliott was able to take the lead, and it looked like he could have had the car to beat until a caution came out with a couple laps to go in stage 2 before Elliott committed to pit road, which forced him to take the stage win and ultimately kind of hurt his chances despite him rallying to finish in the 9th spot yesterday. And of course, the final stage was pretty much all AJ Allmendinger out there, but there were some differing, strategies most of the day. Some guys chose stage points, particularly guys around the cutoff area. Other guys decided to fight for the win and decided to pit early so they can have some track position. And I'd say the guys that pitted towards the end of these stages and sacrificing the stage points played out in their favor to have a shot at the victory, like, of course, AJ Allmendinger. He gave up stage points to go for the win, and it paid off for him. And another thing that was interesting yesterday was the restart box. Instead of being on the front stretch, like the main front stretch that we've used when we go ready to go green on the Coke 600, we put the restart box inside the chicane in the final few corners. And I think it made for some very smart and cool restarts out there. Plus, we didn't have them all bunched up and all wrecking into turn 1 like we have seen over the last couple of years. It was fairly calm on every restart yesterday, and I commend NASCAR for that decision because they made, again, for clean restarts, and a lot of the competitors weren't wrecking each other hard into turn 1 and making boneheaded decisions. It was really good racing yesterday. I think more entertaining Roval race for the next gen car this year versus last year's. Last year's was kind of boring. This one was a little more entertaining, and final stage had a few more cautions and a little more intensity ramp up, especially with Kyle Busch up there trying to win and trying to get into that spot he needed to make it into the round of 8. Didn't happen, but it was still a very fun, entertaining race yesterday. I had a blast at the event, and I'm sure you will see it in my vlog footage later this week, which I will upload my experience from Sunday's race and Saturday's race with the Roval. Great time as always, and I cannot wait to come back to this event in 2024 next year. It's going to be a lot of fun. Really good racing in general yesterday. Now the round of 12 is done. We're on to the round of 8, the Elite 8. The races in the round of 8 consist of Kansas, Homestead, and the round of 8 elimination race at Martinsville, the paperclip. And that race will determine which 4 drivers will advance to the championship 4 in Phoenix, and which 4 will be left wondering, what did we miss to have a chance to make it to Phoenix to battle for a championship? The 8 drivers that remain alive in the Elite 8, they are William Byron, Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, Ryan Blaney, Christopher Bell, and Chris Buescher. Any one of those 4 drivers, any one of those 8 drivers will get one of those 4 spots and make it into the championship 4. Which ones will make it and which ones won't? We'll find out. We've got 3 races to determine who gets into the championship 4, and I cannot wait for those races. So I hope you all have a wonderful week and enjoyed the racing yesterday. For anybody that was at the track live, I hope you all had a blast at it as much as I did, and I look forward again to coming to that event again in 2024. So I hope you all have a wonderful week again. Subscribe, like, congrats to AJ Allmendinger and the colleague team on their win yesterday, and congrats once again to the 8 drivers that have made it into the round of 8 in these playoffs. Have a great night, everybody. Let's go racing.